Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and yes, I know this is a Friday episode that's extremely late. We're doing it on Sunday, and we're posting it tonight, so it's going to be a really quick turnaround. Sorry, there's probably not a thumbnail. Point overall, this article that we're going to go through today actually gives me a little bit of hope, and I was happy I held off as I was going through it and really thinking about the ramifications. I will now read you the headline from the New York Times. It's an opinion piece. Should I snub my right-wing relatives? This is a question that I'm sure lots of people have gone over. I want to know what your opinion is. Have you ever had one of these moments where you snub somebody who's on a different political side than you? Because obviously it's not just people on the right, people on the left also get snubbed by their relatives who are on the right. I've heard it from multiple people that exist in circles that I've operated in, and it's never fun. So you've heard our daily debate. Throw down your comment section comments. Love to hear them. Let's jump into our first quote from the article. And I want to provide context. So this gentleman who's giving his opinion is talking about a family member. He's talking about a brother-in-law. And he's talking about how his brother-in-law has some wacky theories. He's kind of out there. And he goes through the timeline, and I don't necessarily want to play out this entire story. If you really want to read it, you can go to the comments section. You can go to the description down there below the like and subscribe button, and you can find it yourself and go and read it. But the context is important. Quote, "Then the pandemic hit, and our preferences began to feel more than differences in taste. We were on opposite sides of a cultural civil war. The deepest divide was vaccination. I wasn't shocked when Matt didn't get the COVID shot, but I was baffled. Turning down a vaccine during a pandemic seemed like a rejection of science and self-preservation. It felt like he was tearing up the social contract that, until that point, I'd imagined we shared," end quote. And see, this is always the conversation. The way that the author frames it here is the social contract, but you can frame it among many different ways. Conservatives normally frame it as shared values, and that's where they say, we don't have any shared values anymore. And the left, they love to go about and say things of the nature that, the social contract, there's a social contract that you have. I think both framings are accurate descriptors, though they miss the picture. We have to have a shared belief. And this, in my mind, for a lot of people, is something that when they hear, they reject, unless they are already people of the faith, and then they attach it to the meaning, to faith as meaning. That's not what I mean when I say the shared belief. Do you believe, this is the question that I would pose to any American, do you believe that we are a nation that is not only capable, moral, but that deserves to exist? And why would you say this? Why would you ask this question of people? Because it is a belief. It is not something that is 100% verifiable. You can make all the moral and ethical studies about our practices, about what we've done over the course of our years. You can talk about our constitutional values, our Christian values, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, this question, when you answer it, can be backed up by a lot, but it's still your opinion, and it is a belief. It is something that you cannot verifiably say whether or not the American empire in the future or 100% in the past has played out perfectly and is net good. And why do I say this? Because there are so many extraneous factors that come from any one given action that you cannot simply point to this and say, it is a net good. I know people would argue with that perception, and I would say we've done more good than bad, but that doesn't mean that any one person has enough knowledge to pretend as though we can say 100%. And a lot of people are going to reject that. People on the left are going to reject that, say, no, actually, I can measure that we're net bad. And people on the right would probably reject that and say that we are net good. And you can have all of those opinions. But when you start to lay out all of your different cases, I'm going to continually ask you, well, what are the knock-on effects of bringing democracy to places? Installing friendly leaders to the West, or even our spreading of capitalistic intent I would say, personally, because I am a person who loves capitalism, if you haven't listened before, that is one of our greatest triumphs. And yet it has caused a lot of social change. It has codified certain social hierarchies in certain places when they have adapted capitalism to their own needs, wants, and cultural settings. And to pretend as though you can say with 100% certainty that either is great or bad is not something. I'm not saying it's moral relativism, because I do believe that we've been a moral force in the world. But once again, it's a belief, because in this day and age, we live in a place where people reject simple facts. We reject the equations, the balances that you'll put in front of them. And that's not to say I accept their framework, but it is a serious contention when asking the question, what don't we share anymore? If we can't even share an underlying moral sentiment, which I don't think we do in a lot of cases, then we have to look to something else. I know this feels very convoluted, and probably is, because I'm throwing this together as I go along. But the point overall being that we have to have something to believe in. So the question would become, do you think we should exist? Because I don't think the moral argument, I don't think that that will end in a way that is favorable. And it is not something that we can all have. It's not something that we can all share. And when it comes to having a nation, you have to have at least a shared sense of identity. And if you can't even have a shared sense of identity, people don't want to be Americans, then you at least have to ask the question, should we exist? And even if their answer is yes, we should exist in order to spread these sort of values across the world, in order to be better, at least that is a lowest common denominator. Because when we walk into situations like this that the author is describing, we don't share things anymore. He is quite literally pointing this out. He can't even conceptualize. He can't even understand somebody else's position, which is the issue. Not only because you don't have empathy, but it's the fact that you cannot even see yourself on the same plane as somebody else. And when that is indeed the case, you are able to otherize them. You are able to cast them as negative, disperse, whatever word you want to use, a deplorable, a globalist, all these different words that are meant to cast dispersions and to separate them and throw different category titles on them in order to make them an other. So let's jump to the bottom, though, where there's the redeeming quality in this article, in my opinion. And I would say he's not quite perfect, but there is something here. Quote, my advice is always the same. Our differences are meaningful, but allowing them to mean everything is a part of how we end up here. When we cut off our contacts or let algorithms sort us into warring factions, we forget that not so long ago, we used to have things to talk about that didn't involve politics. Shunning plays into the hands of demagogues, making it easier for them to divide us and even, in some cases, to incite violence. So he's appealing to the baseline, we're all humans. And, grand scheme, world peace, that makes sense. Yeah, we're all humans. We can all unite underneath that. But as a nation, as a people living under a sovereign government, we have to have something beyond just we're all humans, because at that point we might as well degrade the borders. Maybe we all love the White Sox. Maybe we all love the American flag. I think, once again, the question we should go about asking is, do we have a right to exist? And if you say no, then maybe we have to work on you, and maybe we question why you're not currently tearing down the government. Or if you are trying to tear down the government, maybe ask you why and what we can do to channel that energy in a productive way. But hey, that's maybe a little bit out of the realm of possibility. Yeah, I'm sorry this one has been all over the place, though it's a fascinating discussion. I leave room to be wrong. I leave room to change my opinions, as I had read this article and was thinking about it most of the day, and of course, thinking and saying things out loud as we are working through this article. So, with that said, thank you for joining me for this episode of the DailyFlip podcast. If you want to check out the article in the description, it'll be linked down there below the like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at your Daily Flip, where I post these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, except this last Friday. And Tuesday and Thursday, you have 6 and 6, which is 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. So, with that said, stay safe, don't die.